bringing the people behind our food to life.
Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a rustic tart called a galette using figs and pears because it is fall and these are the fruits that are in season. And so now I'm going to show you how to assemble the galette crust. And we're going to take our cup of flour and put it into a sifter, or in this case a simple sieve, a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, a quarter of a teaspoon of sugar. There we go. So now we're just going to sift that into our bowl. If it's a little lumpy, feel free to use your fingers. You're going to be using your fingers a whole lot because I'm keeping this very low tech today. I have chilled butter that I've cut into cubes, and I'm just going to add that to this. And when I cut my butter into cubes, I also set aside just a tablespoon of butter to get soft. So here we go. This is the fun part. We are going to work the butter in with our hands. Now, a lot of people have food processors these days, so if you want to use your food processor, you can. The process is very much the same. If you have two knives, maybe you learned that technique, how you take two knives and cut your butter in. Or perhaps you even have a pastry cutter, which is sort of like a crescent wire whisk, and it's really easy to find at a cooking store. So here we go. We're just going to work the butter in. A lot of times when you read recipes for pie crusts, you're going to see that it says to cut your fat in this case butter, sometimes it's shortening, until the mixture is the consistency of coarse meal with pea-sized butter pieces left behind. So that's actually what we're doing. And it's fine to just take the pieces of butter and do this. These are chilled pieces. We don't want to melt the butter, but I have really cold hands, so I don't really worry about it. You can see there's white flour here on the table, but the flour in my bowl is starting to be all yellow from the butter being worked into it. And we're getting pretty close to the pea-sized pieces. If you have some that are too big, as I say, just feel free to chop them in half with your fingers. And I'm doing a very light toss. You don't want to, like get in there and go like this to the dough and press it together. You just want to toss and press, press with your fingertips, just like this. That's looking pretty good. Some of our butter is still a little big, so we just want to get in there and take the time to break those up. This is a good time to actually look out of the window and watch the hummingbirds or something, as you can see. Well, we have our pea-sized pieces, like that, and we have our coarse meal, like that. So now I have 3 tablespoons of ice water. Everything should be very well chilled when you're making a crust, because the whole point is to not melt the butter, but get it worked in with all the ingredients. You know what? I need a little more water. That wasn't quite enough. This can happen, and don't be afraid. You don't want your dough to be dry. Okay, so we're gathering our dough up into a ball. Pick up those last few pieces, and now we're just going to lightly flour the counter and just shape this into a disc. The nicer your disc is, the easier it's going to be to roll your crust. And I know a lot of people have difficulties when it comes to rolling crust, but if you make a nice disc with nice even edges, it's going to be much simpler. So what we need to do now is we're going to chill it for at least 30 minutes. And you could actually do this hours in advance. So you put your dough into plastic and then turn and put it into the refrigerator. While our dough is chilling, we're going to work on the fruit that we're going to put into our galette. So I want to peel the pears. Honestly, you don't have to peel the pears if you don't want to, but either way is fine. These are firm ripe. They're not exuding a lot of juice. You could almost hear that they are still firm, but they're not super firm. If they're too firm, you're going to have some difficulty getting them soft when you're trying to cook them in the oven. So these are just perfect. These are Bartlett's, and you could use Bosc. Because we're in the Pacific Northwest, there are lots of pears we could use. because this is pear country. Now, this is a really fun trick when you're doing your pears for slicing and putting in a tart. You want them to have a really nice shape. So I use a melon baller. And I know that probably a lot of people don't have melon ballers in their house. However, if you just have a teaspoon or something like that, sort of a rounded shape, you go right in and then you get a little curvature there where you take that core out and you continue on up and you can take the whole stem out. So now I have my pears. I don't want them to turn brown on me, so I'm going to put them into some lemon juice that I've squeezed. Just like that. Now they can sit for a while. So our other fruit today is figs. And I have these beautiful black mission figs. And our preparation for these is really simple, much simpler than the pears. We just slice off the end and we slice the fig in half, like that. Oh, so pretty. And remember my soft butter. And this is just, I just think this is fun. Obviously you could put the butter on the onto the figs in a different fashion. But I just take my fig and I just go like that, and I just smear a little butter right onto the fig. Because we're doing everything by hand today. We're doing everything in a really kind of old-fashioned style. We're being Luddites, I guess. There we go. A tablespoon of butter is about right. I'm using 5 figs today, cut in half. You know, the nice thing about a galette is you can use whatever fruit you have around the house, and it doesn't have to be a lot of fruit because it's free form, so you can make this as large or as small as you want. So I didn't use all my butter, that's fine. Now we're going to take about a teaspoon of this turbinado sugar, or the evaporated cane juice sugar that you see around, or you can use brown sugar or white sugar. It's fine. I just really like the turbinado. It's so pretty. It's nice to work with. So if our dough is ready, if it's been about 30 minutes or even a little longer, we can take it out of the fridge and we're going to roll it out. One of the points of chilling your dough is so that you don't have to use a lot of flour. The dough looks really, really nice. Look at that. You can see the little bits of butter. It's got a nice even edge. It's not cracking. If it were cracking, that would mean we probably put too little water, which, you can still make it work, but it makes it much harder to roll. So when rolling your dough, you want to get it into a round, and the way you do that is by moving it. Never, never, never roll your dough like this, really, really hard, staying in the same place. Just keep moving the dough. If you feel it start to stick, which you will, if it's a little too warm or not enough flour, you might feel it start to stick. Just keep moving it like that. So you get a nice shapely round. I'm just going to flour the bottom a little because I can just feel it sticking. For the galette, we want to roll this into, somewhere between 12 and 14 inches. This is a free-form tart, and it's going to be attractive even if it isn't necessarily perfectly round. That's looking pretty close to 14 inches. What we need to do now is get this dough transferred to our pan. I've actually put parchment onto my pan, which is really helpful, and you can get it in any grocery store. So now, in order to transfer the dough, there are 2 ways you can do it. You can roll it around your pin like this and just move the pin over, or you fold it into quarters like this, and then you can transfer it like that, and then unfold it once you get it onto your pan. So now it's on our baking sheet. And the last thing we're going to do before we finish putting the fruit on is we're going to I like to take this little blue plate, and I'm just going to press very gently, and you'll just see there's a very just fine little mark because we're going to keep our fruit in the center of here, and that's actually going to determine the shape, not so much the shape of my crust. I have a mixture here of some flour, sugar, and I'm using black pepper today. You could use nutmeg, you could use cinnamon. any sort of thing you want or mixture. And remember how we put our plate here to make the little round? We're going to sprinkle about half of our flour, pepper, and sugar mixture inside the circle. Started out with 4 tablespoons of sugar and a couple of teaspoons of flour. And then I'm just going to spread it inside my circle like this. Just get it nice and even. We don't care about the edge of the tart, but we want our flour to be nice and even under the pears because it's there to soak up the juice and to sweeten things a little. So that's done. Now we're going to cut our pears so we can put them into the tart. If you can hold the pear so that you can sort of keep it in line with itself, that's best. And if not, you can still make it work. We want to fan the pears. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to lay them there so that they touch the edge of the circle. This is going to be the shape of our galette. And then we're just going to fan that slightly. Then we'll take another one and do the same thing. And another and another and another until we're done. It sort of depends on the size of your pears, how many pear halves you're going to use. These are pretty small. So we're just going to lift that up, take it over here, fan it out. You know how they say as easy as pie? Have you ever heard that phrase? Well, pie's not that easy usually, but galettes are. There we go. And now we are going to fold up the edge of our galette. Any way you do this is going to be fine, but if you can work towards a little bit of a ruffle like this so that you're sort of folding the crust over itself. You saw that just broke there? That's fine. Just squeeze it together slightly. So if we can get a little ruffle going just like that. If you're a seamstress, this is a lot easier. You know about things like this. And now we're finishing making the circle shape. Doing this, we're just patting the dough on the fruit a little bit more, forming our circle a little bit more. And remember we had our figs earlier, so I'm going to place the figs in the center. The butter, when it's in the oven, is going to protect the surface of the fig from getting too dried out, but we want it to sort of dry out a little in the presence of the sugar. You know how different dried figs are from fresh figs, so we're actually going to be getting a little bit of caramelization here, which is going to just make this galette extra yummy. And you know, a lot of times you see it called a rustic tart. So if you see a galette or a rustic tart, basically it's the same thing. So now I brush the outside edge of my galette with a little water. You're welcome to use a brush if you want. I usually use my hands. I feel I can really feel where the water is going. And this is just going to actually make it crisper. I know it seems odd, but if you want a softer crust, you brush it usually with milk. And if you want a crisp crust, you brush it with water. And now I'm going to use a little bit more of my turbinado sugar. A couple of teaspoons is really all you need. Just lightly sprinkle. So now it's ready for the oven. And about 30 minutes ago, I turned my oven on to 400, and I'm just going to place it in there, and it's going to be in there for 40 to 50 minutes. And you just want to make sure that the crust is brown. It's been about 45 minutes, and it smells really good in here. And oh yes, our galette is done. This is gorgeous. Look at the figs, how rosy they got, and the golden crust. This looks really impressive, doesn't it? But it doesn't take very much skill. I'm serious. Even if your dough starts to fall apart, you saw that mine had a little issue over here, and I just squeezed it back together and I just folded it on top. It's supposed to be rustic, and it's rustic, it's beautiful, it looks artisan, it's perfectly imperfect. And I think you're going to enjoy this immensely, so give it a try.
The family's had a very strong conservation ethic. We're continuing that. We've adopted no-till. We're trying to maximize the production on the acres we've got in an economic, sustainable fashion.